Post-traumatic stress through the eyes of a door gunner. Decorated combat veteran, educator, and public speaker, Jim Chancellor understands the perils of war far too well, an education that was thrust upon him in the jungles of Vietnam. But before his presentation begins, Jim is candid about who he is and who he isn't.
You know, before I begin, I want to tell you that I'm not a psychiatrist or I'm not a psychologist. I'm not even a mental health expert. I'm not here to discuss why our veterans act the way they do or say the things they say. This isn't about our veterans, this is about war. But let me tell you what I am. I'm a combat veteran. I'm an old carpenter that once a very long time ago, I was a door gunner on a helicopter, and I'm a man that's been married 4 times. I'm a man who's been in drug alcohol counseling twice, and I'm also a man that's been alone with his thoughts many times. This is my story. This is my journey. Thank you for letting me share it with you.
Jim is driven to educate our youth on war, and he wants our decision makers of the future, our students, to know beyond just our military heroes and the statistics of war, but about those who struggle to come to grips with the war when they return to American soil. For you see, for some veterans, the war doesn't end when they return. For some, it's only beginning.
By talking about about PTSD, it's the hardest thing for a young veteran to do. It's hard to explain. It's hard to talk about it, especially to family and friends. Hasn't been there. That's why when I was getting out, when I got out, I felt alone. I felt that. And I know some of these guys, some of these young veterans too feel the same way. They're looking for the way to speak out, the way for them, somebody to understand, and the bridging the gap of the wars. I think that's the most crucial thing. The young veterans understand to just go out and talk to those veterans who've been there before, and vice versa, the old veterans to meet young veterans and mentor them and explain to them they're not by themselves, because it does get to a point that it feels like life just abandoned you, and that's a difficult thing to feel.
Jim explains his goals and what he hopes to accomplish with this presentation.
You know, my main goal when I do a post-traumatic stress seminar or presentation like this is not to reach out to the veterans, but to reach out to the families and that might have a veteran deployed, or a loved one who might be struggling with a veteran who's come back. And we'll address the issues of what war does, but we'll also give them avenues. There'll always be informative packages. Vet Center will be here tonight. There's always a ways to manage post-traumatic stress. I don't think it's curable, but I think that it's very manageable. And recognition is the key. So the more knowledge we put out, every time we do a workshop, if we change the lives of 1 or 2 people, it's very, very worth it.
Bill Yuzensky, the father of a fallen hero and a Marine himself, talks about the importance of education and understanding.
I'm a Marine veteran, but more importantly, I'm a Gold Star father. I lost my son, who was also a Marine in Afghanistan. Education, period, I think is the key to uniting this country again. And with Jim's presentation, there's a lot of very powerful statements he makes that makes us look at ourselves and what our veterans are going through and what they accomplished, and to be proud of. I walked into presentation, knew what it was about, was going to become a coward, had cold feet, was just going to escape, make some excuse to get out of there. And as I sat through Jim's presentation, it was the stuff I heard and had to face was the best decision I made in a long time.
I've been involved in veterans issues since returning home from Vietnam in 1970. I've been involved in most of the memorials and in Northwest Indiana. Done some public speaking for the VFW at the National Convention. But I've always been driven to, I've always felt a responsibility to our younger veterans and to all American, actually. And working inside the veterans circle is almost like singing to the choir. I really don't have to tell a combat veteran about war because we have a shared experience. So I took on the mission to try to educate our youth, because I think our youth are the decision makers of tomorrow. If I'm lucky enough to put this presentation on at a university, I want the students, after they're done, to realize the true cost of war. And maybe 5 years from now or 10 years from now, if they're in a decision-making position, I want them to remember this presentation. 22 people that risk their life for our freedom commit suicide every day. And I want them to understand when someone says, let's put boots on the ground in Syria or North Korea, I want them to know what that really means. So that's my mission.
As Jim explains other types of traumatic events that could cause PTSD, he stops, pauses, and reflects on those split-second decisions made during war. The split-second decisions oftentimes haunt the survivor, a psychological condition called survivor's guilt.
One time we were on a combat assault, and Jerry Clapp, a friend of mine, was called to do an emergency rescue. And he had to go into a hellhole. And a hellhole is when the grunts on the ground literally cut down 3 or 4 trees, just enough for the helicopter to hover down into the hole and pick up whatever it is they might need, whether it be a medevac or resupply or casualty, pick them up and then go back up. Now, the helicopter has to go very slow down into the hole, and once you're down there, you're very vulnerable to fire above the rotor blades. And that's exactly what happened with Jerry, is they started receiving fire from a mountain adjacent to the hellhole, and Jerry couldn't return fire. And his gunner, his name was Warren Lively, took around through the neck, out the cavity, and out the back side of his chest. And Jerry went to check on Lively, and the only medical training we have is compresses. So Jerry took the compresses on the entrance wound and the exit wound, and he held tight and tried to save Lively's life. About halfway back up the hellhole, we heard the pilot say, receiving fire from 9 o'clock, which means that the ship was taking small arms fire from approximately 9 o'clock, and that Jerry could return fire and protect the ship. Now, at that very second, my friend Jerry had to make a decision whether he left Lively to die and to protect the ship, or he stayed with Lively and left the ship in danger.
My belief is, as a veteran, it's our core value to help other veterans, their situations, and seeing PTSD presentation with Jim, and it made me cry. It made me cry because I was there. I wish more young veterans would see this, especially the ones going to school, to realize there's other veterans are going through this. Maybe not feeling it at the time, but it doesn't hurt to meet other veterans like the Vietnam veterans. I get a lot of respect to those gentlemen and ladies who serve, and they're the ones who comfort me, talk to me, and made me understand who I was, more as a man, as a father, and purpose in life.
As Chancellor brings the reality of war into the room, the audience quiets and emotions begin to surface. Bob Carnegie, an employment specialist with the Indiana National Guard, explains.
Probably the most important reason why the presentation is so impactful is because the presenter is not speaking from a script, he's speaking from his heart. These are things that have been inside Jim for a long time that he wants to share with others. He wants that emotion of what he's experienced to come out in the things he says, the things he shows on the screen, and has rolled it into a presentation that's extremely impactful. And it carries the weight it carries because it's real.
Jim has presented this program at colleges across the Midwest. The program is free, and Jim hopes that universities, veterans groups, or civic organizations will bring him in to share his message about the true cost of war. One of the organizations Jim has worked with in the past is the Veterans Treatment Court in Porter County, Indiana. His role was to enlighten their veteran mentors, as Jackie Algazzini, case manager and coordinator of Veterans Treatment Court, explains.
What brought Jim to our attention at first is we have a mentor component to our Veterans Treatment Court, and it's just people that have served in the military that want to work with other veterans. And, you know, everybody has their story, but how do you get somebody that's just coming back from combat or somebody that has been struggling with their issues all by themselves able to talk about things? So we thought after meeting Jim that his presentation would be very impactful to the mentors so they can start to get the mentee to open up and start talking about what is going on with them. So Jim came to our, to Judge Gent is the judge that I work for, and he came to Judge Gent's courtroom, and we had probably about 35 people there, and came in with this beautiful PowerPoint presentation, and just started talking about what are some of the issues that you have to start paying attention to. And then he was able to relate it with all his personal stories and then a lot of statistics. He brought a lot of educational information into the program, and it was just phenomenal. Nobody was speaking, nobody was doing anything other than watching him, listening, and you had moments where your hair was standing up on your arms and the back of your neck. It was really powerful.
This powerful presentation always ends with a very emotional question and answer period, and the types of questions vary by the demographics of the audience. But more often than not, the question most often asked by our youth is, "Did you ever kill anyone?" Jim's response is based on experience, and the emotional and often difficult answer is not anything that you could imagine.
Oftentimes I get asked a question, did you kill anyone? And it's never from a combat veteran, and I really never give the pat answer back to what they're looking for. It would be easy to answer that question as a door gunner, but there was a time in Vietnam when we were moving friendly people off the side of a mountain, and there was not supposed to be any VC there at all. And so it was on the side of a mountain, so we could only touch the front skids of our helicopter down at one time. So it was a precarious time. Each time we picked people up, the back of our helicopter was still off the ground. And about the third trip we went there, we started receiving small arms fire. And once a firefight starts, it's very hectic. War is the most exciting thing I've ever done. I'm not trying to glorify it. I'm just saying that it's just total chaos once it breaks out. Once the firefight started, there was a man that tried to get on our ship, and it was too much weight at that time. And Steve Warren, who was flying the ship, said, "Jim, we're too heavy, we can't go." And so I pushed him off, and I returned fire during this firefight. And then as he tried to jump back on the ship, I kicked him in the collarbone and kicked him off the ship. And at that time, he ran underneath my M60 machine gun, and in an attempt to get on the other side of the ship,